All right, let's go ahead and get started. Looks like a couple people just dropped in right now. So let's kick this off and start today's webinar session. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Today will be an agent training webinar. My name is Suzanne Shahood, and I'm a success specialist here with the desk team. I'll be leading today's session, and I also have my colleague Sarah with me to help with our Q&A at the end. I would like to thank everyone for taking time out of your probably very busy schedules to attend today's training session. We certainly have a big crowd today, which is really excited, and I really appreciate everyone's time, and I hope that today's webinar will be both informative and helpful to everyone attending. So before we get started, a reminder that today's webinar is for anyone who is getting close to completing their setup in Service Cloud and ready to have their agents and team join the platform. It's also for anyone who is just looking to get familiar with how your agents can be productive in Service Cloud. So you don't necessarily need to be an agent in Service Cloud to attend today's session. If you are an agent, this should be a really relevant session for you. So thank you all for dialing in, and let's get started. Before presenting the actual deck, I do need to cover this legal slide to briefly remind everyone that Salesforce is a publicly traded company, and you need to base all your purchasing decisions on products and services that are currently available on the market. So with that out of the way, let's have a look at today's agenda. Sarah and I will briefly introduce ourselves so you can learn more about who we are and what we do here at Salesforce and the desk team. We'll then discuss levels of knowledge expertise and walk you through some main features that are important to know in the Service Console. I'll first cover these in list format just to provide a brief overview over what we will actually be talking about in the demo and session. I'll then continue on and discuss each of those items as an actual walkthrough in the Service Console, and it will be a hands-on walkthrough of the console. After that demo, we'll briefly recap what we discussed in the demo. I'll share some helpful resources for further training, and these will be training resources both available on our own desk portal as well as the Salesforce community. And I'll also share some links on tutorials provided by the Salesforce training platform called Trailhead. We'll cover more on Trailhead and these training materials towards the end of today's session. And finally, when we're done with that, we will reach an open Q&A where Sarah and I will try to cover all your questions. Hopefully, we will have time to cover everyone's questions since we have a pretty big crowd today. If any questions are unanswered today, then I'll make sure to include those in the email that will be sent to everyone at the end of today. So you'll all receive a follow-up email towards the end of today. All right, let's get started. A little bit about myself. I joined Salesforce about 2.5 years ago, and I started off as a technical support rep with the desk support team. So some of you may have interacted with me in the past if you are a previous desk customer, and if you submitted any cases to the desk support team. I just recently moved over to our new internal scale team just a few months ago in an effort to focus solely on helping customers transition off desk and over to Service Cloud. So now I'm more of a dedicated resource to help with that setup in Service Cloud and the migration off desk. And part of my new role here is to lead webinars similar to this one. I also help lead office hours that we host weekly. So on that note, if you haven't attended any of our office hours before, feel free to sign up for those. We do host them every week. It's a great way to learn more about Service Cloud as a product and learn more about how my team can help you through the process of migrating into Service Cloud. I'll make sure to share some information and links on how to sign up for those webinars towards the end of the session in case anyone is interested. Most of my time is actually spent teaching customers how to use Service Cloud and introduce them to the platform. So I'm really excited about leading today's session. It's part of what I do on my day-to-day work. So I'll do my best to cover a proper introduction to what Service Cloud has to offer. I also have my colleague Sarah with me on the call today that will be helping me with the questions and Q&A at the end. Sarah, would you like to unmute yourself and just briefly introduce yourself to everyone?
Hi, everybody. My name is Sarah. I work as a senior technical support engineer on the desk.com team. So again, like Suzanne said, you've probably spoken to me on various occasions through cases. Um, so basically today would be really helpful for you guys is the fact that we ourselves have transitioned over to Service Cloud from Desk. So in that Q&A session or even throughout the webinar, if you have any questions around, as an agent from an agent's perspective, which is what I am, how the change affected our workflows and our productivity and what benefits we saw from it, please ask away. Ask as many questions as you like about that. Both myself and Suzanne are a great resource to see how this change works with a team and how it can be successful for your team. So keep those questions coming and we'll try and answer as many as we can for you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sarah. And yes, absolutely, as Sarah said, feel free to post your comments throughout the session. You don't have to wait until the very end, and we'll try our best to get to every question that is posted. So let us go ahead and let me hop back here. Let us go ahead and have a look at knowledge expertise. So the goal with today's webinar is really to walk you through some main functionalities in Service Cloud shared from that agent's perspective, as well as sharing some really good training resources to help you form that solid knowledge on how to actually use the cloud and how to best work out of the console as an agent. So here at Desk and with the Desk.com team, we want to do our best to help you as agents be successful in Service Cloud as well. And training is really key to making the most out of the functionality that is available to you right now in Service Cloud. There are tons of ways to gain more knowledge. There's a lot of different ways to gain more experience in how to use Service Cloud. But what I would like to remind everyone is before you dive deeper into these available resources, take a step back and evaluate your experience. For instance, are you an administrator that is also working out of Service Console, handling cases that might be escalated by your team? Or perhaps you're a super user on the team, someone who knows their way around the console a little bit more than the average user, and you find yourself that you're often lending a hand and helping other agents who get stuck. Or are you just starting off in Service Cloud? You're a new agent, you're still in need of basic training to get properly onboarded on the platform. Depending on where you're at with your experience in Salesforce, you can still make use of different tools and resources available to help you either leverage knowledge that you may already have or just work on boosting knowledge overall and learning more about Service Cloud. So we'll cover resources shortly. Before we do that, let's just first have a look at Service Cloud features that you would be using daily as an agent in Service Cloud. So before we chat about the actual components and the functionalities, I want to remind everyone that there are two interfaces available on the Salesforce platform, the classic interface and the lightning interface. For today's webinar, we will focus mainly on the lightning interface. So just a heads up on that. In case anyone on the call is using classic, that is perfectly fine. It is just that we've chosen to make the lightning interface our preliminary choice. Given all the enhancements that have been made to the lightning version, we want to make sure that we're always making the most out of the platform and any new features that are added to Service Cloud. So that will be what we're using for today's session. So this slide just talks about some of the components that we'll be highlighting in the webinar. First, I'll walk you through a general overview of the console to make sure that everyone knows how to navigate their way around. We'll be looking at split views, related records, the case detail page, the compact case feed, and finally the knowledge component and the utility bar. Once we've covered that just sort of generic navigation of the console, we'll have a look at some of the details of list views. List views is where you bucket your cases into various filters to work on your cases more efficiently. And then we'll talk about global actions, which are used to create new records faster without having to navigate away from whichever page or layout you're at the moment. Then we'll talk about case feed. Case feed is where you see important case events displayed in a chronological order so you can quickly see the progression of a case. We'll touch on quick actions. Quick actions are part of the case feed, And it allows you to do anything from sending an email to logging a call or simply adding a case comment or reassigning a case. So we'll talk a little bit about those actions. And finally, we'll cover macros. We'll briefly introduce how these canned replies work and how to apply them to a case. And I'll introduce a knowledge component. It's a fairly large component. We'll give you a brief introduction to how it can be used to append content to a case before sending it out to your end user. So let us go ahead and have a look at this. I will briefly pause my screen and log into my org here. And before I do so, I just wanted to briefly walk you through how these cases are generally being created. So here at desk.com, whenever someone visits our support center, support.desk.com, and scroll down to those cases from Service Cloud and respond back to our end users. Some of you may have this form or similar forms either hosted on external pages or on your actual portals where cases are coming in this way from the web, creating web cases. Others may have actual mailboxes associated to their Service Cloud, meaning if your end users email into one dedicated email address for support, for example, then that will automatically create a case in the console, and you as agents are able to handle your cases from here. So I just briefly wanted to show you where cases are coming from before they actually enter the queue. So before we have a look at the actual console, let me just briefly pause here and log into my demo org. And give me 1 second here. All right, so you should now be seeing simply a demo org of the Service Cloud product. So we will not be using our actual support console for this webinar. So this is what Service Cloud looks like in Lightning. This is the Service Console in Lightning. And I've selected just a generic list view here called All Cases, just to showcase a few sample cases here that have been created for the session. Let me go ahead and open up a case here, and we'll do a brief overview over what is available in a case in Service Cloud. Now, keep in mind before we look at the details here, every layout is different because every administrator may choose to have specific fields visible and other fields hidden from you as agents. So consider this just a sample Lightning console and one example of how Service Cloud and how cases in Service Cloud could look like. So it may not look like this on your end. So view this as just as an example of what it could potentially be. So let's first touch on split views. If you noticed here on the left hand, there's this really narrow line that you can click on to open up what we call split views. Split views allows you to see a list of available cases within different list views opened up alongside with your actual workspace here on the case. So this is a really neat way to quickly work through incoming cases. Let's see, you had your My Cases open here, and you want to quickly see what is coming in as new cases that still need to be handled. Then you can, from within your workspace, without having to navigate away, you can click on the split view, navigate over to a separate list view to quickly see what has come in as new cases. So you never actually have to leave the case that you have open here in your tab. And split views are easy to click away and click in again whenever you want to see them or hide them. And it will give you a brief summary of important information that you might need to see as an agent. So status, case ID, the channel type. This is a phone case, whereas this is an email form that was submitted as a web case. And you can also see the name of the customer. And from here, you're able to quickly determine whether or not you need to open any of these cases to handle them, or maybe assign them to yourself. So these are split views. Now let's have a look at related components. Related components, there's a few examples of related components. We have case details, which is here at the top left corner. And then we've also chosen to make contact details and account details visible here underneath it. And these are components that have simply been added to the Lightning page and the Lightning layout to allow you to see specific information related to a case that was submitted. It just helps you as an agent get a well-rounded picture of what the issue is that the customer is reaching out for. So for example, I can tell from the subject line here, it gives me a hint of what the issue might be around. I can see here it says the widget we received on the wrong side. So it's a way to just quickly give the agent some of that knowledge and information right off the bat when they're opening up the case. We've also chosen to make status included, priority, the case number, and ownership, for example. And again, this is highly customizable, so your administrator has full access over customizing this to allow you to see specific fields and maybe hide other fields that might not be as important. And the same thing applies here for the contact details. You can quickly jump down to review just main details about who this customer is, such as name or title, email address. And then from here, navigate over to the name of the account and information about the account that this one customer, Edward here, is associated to. So I never really have to navigate away from my case to find any of this information. It's all here where I need it in my case view. So that was a little bit about related records and what you can do with components for related records. Now, what about the layout itself and details regarding other custom fields or standard fields that you might have? Well, let's navigate over to this tab here, the Details tab. These fields or the remaining fields are found here under Details. So the Details tab up here holds the rest of the main page layout, so all the other information that is not showing here in the case details section. So you would essentially review the details page for any other information where you would like to see exactly which fields were filled out or when they were filled out. For example, you can see information about when a case was last modified and the exact timestamp for that. Or you can see the origin of the case, any other information and any other fields that your administrator is allowing you to see would be available on this page layout. And what you can also do on this page layout is you are able to minimize these sections to help visibility. So if you don't need to see all that information right away, you do have the option to minimize the sections. And whatever you choose to do here, if I choose to minimize these 3 sections and keep these 2 open, if I close out of the case and hop back into the case, that is remembered by the console and it will always keep the view this way for you. And a quick reminder here, any changes you make here are not reflected on other agents' layout. So this is individual to you as an agent and your login. All right, let's have a look at the case feed since it's right up here next to details. The compact case feed, as it's called, that's the full name of it. This is really where your main work will be done. And what the case feed does for you as an agent is it helps you understand how a case has progressed. It helps you quickly see the actual history of a case. And the way it's presented to you is it's more of a news-like feed. So under here, you're able to see the exact events that may have occurred on a case. Here, I added a logged call. I used one of the actions for a logged call, and it's added here as an historical event to explain that this is something that occurred on this case. I also made a post on this case, and when I do so, the feed automatically updates to reflect that information and show me as an agent what has historical happened on this case, always chronologically ordered. So this is the case feed. It does actually distinguish these different interactions from each other. So whether I add a case comment or log a call, the icons next to each event that is recorded will look differently. I believe the case comment is yellow. The post always looks like a bubble here, and the call looks like a call icon. It might be a little small for you to see, but the actual icons logged for each event looks a little bit differently to help you just make it a little bit easier to distinguish those different actions and interactions on a case. So that is the feed. We will come back to touch on these actions in a little bit, but just to complete this sort of generic overview of the console, let's quickly have a look at knowledge, which we placed here on the right side. Since we covered everything that was located on the left-hand panel, let's hop over to the right side panel where we have displayed the knowledge component. And the knowledge component, I really want to reiterate the fact that it's a large component that is powerful. You can do so much with knowledge. To serve this as a brief introduction, knowledge will allow you to see suggested articles, as well as actually search for particular articles that you know the name of and that you need to navigate over to directly. And what the knowledge component does is it allows you to solve cases faster. And you might ask yourself, why? Well, these articles, what they contain is actual information that you usually share with your end users. You might be sharing specific instructions or step-by-step guides, certain information that your end user is requesting. You need to share this in a quick and easy way. You might also need to share it not just as actual steps, but you may want to include images that are inlined in your response. You might want to add some formatting and bold some words or paragraphs within your actual text and reply. And what knowledge does is it allows you to retain all your formatting, allows you to input it in a case reply and send it directly to a case as an appended article. So all that can be done from within this case. And we'll go back to knowledge in a little bit and show you an example of how that is done. So we'll touch back on knowledge in a little bit, but we've chosen to make it visible here on the right-hand side because we just found it to be a nice area for it to be displayed where you can work out of your cases here in the middle and have suggested articles right next to you on the right side. Now, our final component that we're covering for this overview is this part at the bottom here. I hope it's displayed properly in the screen. This is what we call the pre-configured utility bar. Really long word. Let's just call it utility bar. This bar is really there for you as agents to increase your productivity. And the reason for that is it's here so that your administrators can add specific tools to it. For example, the note tool. Notes is where you can quickly jot down things at any time without having your note related to a specific case record or any record at all. You have the history here. History is a quick way to go back to recently viewed records, whether it was a report, another app, or a specific case record. You can quickly go back and see what you had open and click back on it. What we also have here, which is one of the most important features in Service Cloud and one of the most used one by agents, is macros. Macros are a great way to use canned responses and reuse responses that are commonly used in cases that are coming into your queues. That is also found here at the utility bar. So a really handy area where you can grab a lot of different items. If you're using CTI as part of your console, CTI is for phone calls, then your administrator would also add this integration for phone calls down here so that you can take your phone calls from the same area. So it's a great part of your console. Do not overlook this. You'll find yourself making use of these tools and functionalities here at the bottom of your bar. We'll come back to macros later. I'll show you how macros are used. Now that we've actually covered the overview, let's go back and look at some of the details of these components now. Let me go back to the list view. And let's talk about list views, because this is where you usually start off when you're about to take a case that you want to handle. So as a reminder again, list views are your buckets, your filters of where cases are being routed. And this is where you choose to select where you want to work out of to grab your cases, whether you're part of a support team and you only handle cases out of this list view, or if perhaps cases are automatically assigned to you and you only work out of your My Cases view. I'll just stick with the All Cases, which is a generic list view that will display all cases for all channels, any status, without consideration to the ownership. So let's first look at these columns. All of these columns showing here are customizable, so you do have access to change what columns do appear for you here. For example, you can click on this cog icon here for settings and select fields to display if you need to quickly add a new column to see here. For example, escalated is a common checkbox that is being used by agents to be able to determine if a case has been escalated to a separate team or not. So you can quickly add it here to customize this column and be able to see it from your list view. So right now, none of my cases are escalated, so none of these checkboxes are checked. But if any of them were, it would be a great way to quickly see that and be able to act accordingly. Now, now that I've mentioned that, there may be restrictions to your access to these sections to be able to customize this column if your administrator has pulled any of that access level. So just keep that in mind. If any of these options are grayed out, then it means that your administrator would just need to give you a little bit of extra permission to make these changes. And these columns are possible to sort by clicking next to them. There isn't any restriction really here in what you can sort by and what you cannot sort by. So these are great columns. You're able to fully customize this without affecting your other peers and other agents. So the view is individual to yourself, unless you make the changes to a list view that is shared by others. So if your all cases view is shared by other teams, then changes made here will affect them as well. But if you're making changes to your own My Cases view, or if you have any custom view here that is only visible to yourself, then those changes would be just applicable to yourself and anyone else you're sharing that view with. Quickly, let me mention, you do not necessarily have to use this table list. So this view having cases listed in order here, you do have the option to choose something called Kanban. So you can select here to display cases as Kanban, which looks like this. If you're not familiar with Kanban, let me just briefly let you know how it works. It's basically a way to quickly update cases and move them along in the status here without opening them up. So I can grab my pending cases here and move it back to open by simply dragging and dropping, or take this open case and move it to closed, and so forth. So a way to quickly interact with cases without opening them up and using drag and drop functionality. So let me go back to table and let's have a look at the top here. This star is overlooked and I want to highlight it because it's a great way to bookmark anything from specific list views that you're frequently using to adding actual specific case records, or maybe your favorite report, or a specific account or contact that you use on a daily basis. All I need to do is, while being on that page, click the star. So right here, I actually had my cases already starred. So let me go to support and I add the star icon here and it's automatically added to my list. So from here, I can quickly navigate over to specific account records, for example, to save time and not have to search for them, or simply just navigate to my cases list view if I know that I'll be using it often. So this is a great way to add shortcuts whenever needed. Let's have a look right next to the favorite shortcut icon. This is the global action list right here, this plus sign. Global actions, I think that they are a bit overlooked. These features are actually a great enhancement to the console and really powerful because they are global, meaning these are visible regardless of what layout you are at. and they are there to allow you to quickly create new records or events or tasks without having to navigate away from where you are. So I might be on an account record, I might be on a specific report, and I realize I quickly need to log a call or add a task. And all we need to do is click on that drop down, which is sort of a bookmarked menu. And from here, click my action and select who I want to add the call for and log my call. And that is all I need to do. It will automatically take care of that and log the call for me. I stay at my account page. I don't have to go anywhere else. So this is a great feature that I hope everyone is making use of. These are considered shortcuts, and they do navigate over to other types of objects in the console. Again, a reminder that this is customizable, so this list might look a little bit differently on your end. It just depends what types of actions your administrator have made visible to you and made available to you as agents. Now that we've talked about global actions, let us actually go back to the case and talk about the quick actions. Quick actions are different from global actions. So these are quick actions, these tabs here: email, log a call, case comment, post, and change owner. I've chosen just to make these 5 visible here. These are the main quick actions that most agents use. And these can be used for several common actions, such as the main one, sending an email. You have the rich text editor available here. You're able to add any formatting that you would need. You can add links, images, inline, or add it as attachments, and really do anything that you would need with the actual reply that you're sending. There is a preview option at the bottom to preview the email that you are putting together. So this is, I would say, the most commonly used quick action, which is the send email action. Moving over, log a call is the one I just mentioned here, which is essentially logging a call associated to a certain customer. And when you do that and log a call, it will be updated in the feed so that you can see that a call was logged for this case. Moving over to case comments, a really popular feature. These are essentially just notes. You are adding a note on your case to let your internal team know any information that might be relevant and you would need to make it visible to other agents. So if there's any specific information here, this case is high priority, for example, because this was a high priority case. You may need to add that as a heads up or a comment. And when you add that note and comment on the case, it is automatically updated in the feed and logged as an event that occurred. With that mentioned, you do have the option to post. And the difference between that is you can target an agent specifically to let them know something. For example, I need to let the super agent know here that you need to work on this right away. When I do that and I mention this other agent on my team and I share this, a couple of things will happen. First off, the feed will, of course, automatically be updated to reflect that event. The second thing is that the super agent here will receive an email notification to let them know, hey, someone actually called your name right here. There's a link to the case directly. They get that email, they can quickly click the link to navigate straight back to this case and look at the information that was added. Also, when they do log into the Service Cloud at any time, they do get an alert up here. If you guys see up here in the right-hand corner, there is an alert for notifications. It will show him in red that there's an alert coming in, and that agent is able to see the notification and the full message that I put when I mentioned the agent. So this is a really great way to collaborate with other agents. We use it all the time internally, and I'm sure most of you will find it very useful to use as a mechanism to just collaborate across teams with other people within that same Service Cloud instance. The last one I want to mention here is pretty straightforward, and it really doesn't really need much explanation. You are able to change ownership from the case details section if your administrator has made it visible from here. They may choose to make it visible as in a quick action instead. You would click on the tab, and change the ownership to either another user or another queue. So in this case, I do want to reassign it to my super agent. And when I save that, the ownership will automatically be reflected, and that case will be sent to that agent's My Cases queue. So plenty of cool things that can be done here in the feed with these quick actions. So now that we've covered the majority of all the things that can be done in here, let us go back to macros as promised. Let me actually hop back to show you all. If you are on a list view, any list view, and on a list view page, and you select macros from the utility bar, then it will not allow you to edit existing macros or append macros, because list view pages simply do not support macros. So what you need to do is you need to be in an actual open case and have that tab open, and then click on macros from the utility bar to be able to see various macros and edit existing macros if you have permission to edit macros. So with that mentioned, the macro list here will provide you with both recent macros that have been recently applied by others on your team and yourself, as well as you can click here down at the show all to see a list of all the available macros. So usually you have a long list of macros here. I only have 2 as examples here, but there's usually quite a few macros that you're able to select. And you can also search for the direct name of a macro and grab it from there. And to run a macro, all you really need to do is click on the name of the macro and then highlight and click on the Run Macro button here. Or you can double click on the name. So I can double click on More Info plus Pending. In this case, I'm simply going to click Run Macro to apply this macro to my case. And what the macro view here automatically does is it will walk you through the changes it is making to the case so that you can see what was actually updated. So this particular macro, what it did here is it changed my status to pending and it saved that action. It then added a case comment with the name of the macro that was applied. That way I can see in the event history in my feed that a macro was actually applied. It saved that action, and it finally added a canned response to my email area. So let's have a look at it. Here is my status set to pending. And if we scroll down to the feed, here is my case comment that has been updated with the name of the macro that was applied, so other agents can see that I added and actually ran this macro. And finally, here is the actual response that was added from the macro. And if you'll notice here, it added something that we call merge fields. So this code here, contact.name, this will automatically pull in Edward's name here. So he is the contact on this case. It will pull in Edward's name in the email reply, and it will automatically reflect his actual name when the email is sent. So you can, if you would like to see what it looks like, click the preview at the bottom here, and you'll see that that name has actually been rendered and is populating the full name for Edward. So this is what the actual email would look like after sending. So that is how macros are used. A final note I want to add here is, because I'm logged in as an administrator, I do have access to this plus sign here, which would allow me to create a new macro. Agents in Service Cloud are able to create macros if you have been given additional access by your administrator. So the default behavior is that agents can run macros, but not necessarily create new macros. However, your administrators do have access to give you extra permission to also be able to create records and or edit existing macros. So if you think that that is something that you would need as part of your role as agents, all you would need to do is notify your administrators and they would be able to provide you with that extra access. So that was macros. Let's now have a look at the final component, which was knowledge, as promised. So with knowledge here, I mentioned that there were 2 ways that you could do this. You can search for knowledge. I need to look for a knowledge article here called Set Up My Email Channel. And when I click on it, it will open up my article in a separate tab. So my case is still here. Nothing has happened to my case, but there's an additional tab open here so I can review the content of this article. And some important things to note here are here at the top. So the main one here is the status. You as agents can generally only see published articles. However, just as with macros, if you have been given additional permissions, you may also be able to see drafts, which means you're likely allowed to edit articles that have not yet been published. But if you have regular default permissions in Service Cloud as agents, published is the majority. That's the most common status that you would see. So in this case, my article here is a published article, meaning it's customer facing. I'm able to see the version number, when it was last updated, and the number. So it does have a unique ID within the console. And this is the actual content of my article. So I have a mix of actual text here. Some is formatted into bold and here. And then I have inline images. And this article is supposed to walk through an end user how to set up email. So if I want to use this content within my case here, Edward is struggling with this email and I would like to help him. So I do have a couple of options here. Directly from the knowledge component, I can click on this drop down and I'm able to, so right now I actually had it attached. So let me quickly detach it here. So if I click on this drop down, I'm able to either attach the article to my email, meaning it would not be inlined as an actual response, but it will be attached as an attached content article to my email message that is being sent. Or I can click the insert article into email. And when I do so, it will automatically insert all of my existing content within that article, and it will retain all the formatting. So it will not strip it from any of the rich text formatting that I have. The words are still bolded as is. The images are not added as attachments that your end user would have to click on one by one to see, but they can actually see these inline images within the actual email reply. So all I would really need to do here is maybe preview the email to make sure that everything looks okay. And then I would hit send to send this off to my end user. So the knowledge article and the knowledge component is really powerful. It allows you to search existing articles. It allows you to see suggested articles. It allows you to review the actual content of the article to make sure that this is the actual article you need. This is the content that you would need to share with your end user to help resolve that case. So again, there's a lot that can be done with knowledge. Consider this just a brief introduction on how it can be leveraged while working on cases in Service Cloud. And there are plenty of resources out there explaining even more complex things that can be done with knowledge articles in Service Cloud. Now let's go back to my deck here. I'm going to briefly pause my screen. And let me maximize this. And let me share my screen again. So let's just do a brief recap over what we looked at in Service Cloud today. We looked at how to navigate your way around the console. We discussed list views, which is where you're working on your actual cases and where the cases are being routed. We touched on global actions that allows you to create new records. We discussed case feed and a way that case feed allows you to see case history and historical events. We also talked about how quick actions could be used. And we looked at macros and how macros can be applied on cases. And we finally had a look at knowledge content and how knowledge can be attached to a case. Now, let us finally look at resources. We have about 15 minutes left, so we're good on time. What I really want to stress here is that you do have our desk support team available as a resource. We are available here to help. But in addition to our team and our support, we have created valuable resources to you in an effort to try to answer your questions as agents, in an effort to help you get started with your agent training. I categorize these resources into a couple groups here. So we have Trailhead, live events, communities, and other resources such as workbooks and guided journeys. Let's start with Trailhead. Trailhead is our gamified online platform. So it is native to Salesforce. It is a free tool that was designed and built for anyone to be able to use. So whether you're an agent or an administrator, it was designed to bite-size learning units, make it easier for you to actually jump into a training module, to maybe take a training that is 10 minutes long, go back to doing something else, and then you can go back to training whenever you're available. So you're able to pause your training and hop back to it at any time. You're able to control how you're doing your training. And with that, Service Cloud does have multiple units available on Trailhead. I would definitely recommend that you all have a look. It's free for everyone to sign up for. I've put the address in the chat box. So if you're not familiar with Trailhead, it's a great online learning tool that anyone is able to make use of. Now let us talk about live events, because we are running consistent webinars here at Salesforce and with the Desk.com team. We are running both office hours, which runs once a week, and then we do have specific webinars focused on specific topics, such as this one, for example, talking about agent training. We will have other topics coming up, and we'll have other webinars being scheduled. So I will include in the email that is being sent to you all at the end of today, all the links available so that you can go to our registration page and our calendar and sign up for all these sessions if you're interested. Communities are a great resource for anyone that is looking to post a specific question. They're very responsive. They hold a wealth of knowledge. So don't hesitate to reach out to communities. There is always someone in the community that has an answer to your question. So I would definitely recommend that you make use of these communities. I've linked 2 communities here that I would think would be most relevant to you as agents coming from Desk or working out of Service Cloud. So what I would like to say here finally with the last 2, we have a workbook that we created here at Desk that will walk you through guided step-by-steps on how to use specific features in Service Cloud. I also want to point out the Service Cloud trial. These trials can be used as a playground. So I would recommend, if you haven't really had a chance to use the console outside of your live org, or haven't had a chance to really play around with it, feel free to grab one of these Service Cloud trials. There is no strings attached. You can sign up for a trial for 30 days, 90 days, and use that as a playground to test out Service Cloud and just use the console to learn more about how it actually works. So with that, I would recommend, if you're a visual learner, I would say you're better off starting with Trailhead and the workbook to find your answers. If you're targeting a specific question that you have in Service Cloud or trying to solve a certain problem in the console, then I would recommend that you reach out to the communities. And finally, if you have no preference in mind, you're just starting off and open to look at anything, I would say go with the webinars and the Trailhead modules. These are a great starting point to work on your knowledge and increase it from there. So with that, we have reached the end of the webinar. I hope that you all found it useful. And again, I will be sharing the full deck with all links included towards the end of the day in an email that will be sent out to everyone. So let's now open it up to questions. I hope that there are some questions in there. Sarah, if you can help me, let's just walk through what you all have posted, and we'll try our best to cover questions for the next 10 minutes or so.
Thanks, Suzanne. So we've got a number of questions during your lovely demo. So I'm going to read out some of the more relevant ones that will be relevant to all customers. So one great question was, will it be possible for customers to subscribe to knowledge base articles in Service Cloud? Unfortunately, the answer is no. However, this is definitely an idea that has been submitted to the Salesforce Ideas community. So with Salesforce, we'll take on board, what our customers need, and the releases happen every three times a year. So the chances of this being implemented are quite high. So this is definitely something that is being looked into for communities. It wouldn't be necessarily articles that customers could subscribe to. The point would be that they could subscribe to specific topics and then get notified when a new article is to that topic. So stay tuned for that to be released. More questions? Bear with me. Is there a place to put notes so they don't get forwarded to the customer? So as Suzanne demoed, the @mentioning post functionality is what we would use on the Desk.com support team, mostly to add just notes or to simply collaborate with the members of our team. So that post quick action that you saw towards the end of the demo would be what you would use to create private notes between your agents on cases. Another question, is there a customer portal where they can log in cases? Yes, this is called Communities. This is included as an add-on as part of your Desk to Service Cloud swap. So your customers can log into your community where you would articles, and they can also view their cases as they can in the Desk Support Center currently. And then our macros and knowledge base articles be automatically migrated into Service Cloud. Macros will not be migrated. You will need to set these up again. However, our team have built a migration tool, which is free and to your trial org to migrate all of your cases or just some of your cases, depending on what you wish to migrate, and your knowledge base articles into your new Service Cloud org. So that's a new tool that's been created by our team. It's in there for you to use, and our team currently support that. So if you have any issues using it or setting it up, please reach out to Desk.com support to get assistance with that migration.
Are there any more questions, Sarah? I see that
there's a few more coming in, so bear with me. We have one question on reporting. So we actually already hosted a webinar on reporting, specifically just on reporting. So you will find the video recording of that webinar available on our support center, but we can also send that directly in the email to you as well. So that is a full webinar on reporting. Our webinars will also be available on our video support center shortly. So any webinars that you've missed in our series, you'll be able to watch the recordings of those too. So another question, can multiple contacts be associated with a single case? No, as in Desk, it is one contact that has to be the primary contact on a case. However, you can CC in multiple contacts within the same account on case interactions. So if a merge field is changed after a macro is sent, will past emails change? So I'm assuming that what this means is if you decide to change, for example, we showed the example of customer.name, which shows the full name of the customer, and then let's say halfway through the interactions, you decided to change that to customer.firstname. No, it won't automatically update past emails. It'll just then, from then on, when you use that macro, it will then only pull the first name for the customer.
And I see, Sarah, there's one question on previous webinar recordings. Do you by any chance have the link handy so we can share it where we have recordings from the past sessions?
Absolutely. Let me try get that for you now. If I can't find it immediately, we will post it in the follow-up email as well. We'll provide that for you too.
Perfect.
No, they're not on Trailhead. I know someone has asked that question. They're hosted on our own support center.
Yes, correct.
Here we go. Now, I'm just going to post the link now in our chat there for everyone. If anyone has any problems getting that link, don't fret. We'll also add it to the follow-up email.
Perfect. Thank you, Sarah.
So we've just a few more minutes left for any additional questions, so keep your questions coming. But again, if you have any other questions after this webinar, you can always reach out to us here at Desk.com support or respond to the email that we send.
And since we have a few minutes left, I can go over a common question that we do get, which is if you are an administrator or the actual not just administrator, but whoever is the stakeholder or in charge of getting your team onboarded, a common question that we get is, how do I make sure my agents feel comfortable working at a service cloud, given that most likely it's a new platform for most of your team? And what we usually say is that there isn't really a correct or a good or bad answer to this. We believe that training goes a long way. Training really helps. And we believe that you should plan for your agents' training. So give them enough time to really dive deep into the resources, dive deep into the material, and allow them to really actively hands-on test the console by either creating a trial org or simply spinning up a sandbox instance for them that they can use for training as a playground. Some people are visual learners, others, everyone is different, but by doing and by actually testing by yourself, that usually helps the training really stick and helps them adopt the platform and this new product much faster. So we recommend for sure that you make sure, if you are an administrator, that you have a sandbox or some sort of a trial org spin up for them so that they can use that as a non-live environment, so that they don't have to worry about breaking anything or doing anything wrong. Just a playground where they can do whatever they want to try out all the functionality that is available to them.
Yeah, it's great advice, Suzanne, and that's definitely something that we did ourselves. We had a number of weeks to practice using the console and give our feedback of functionality to allow our administrators to make changes and improve our workflows for us. Another question has come in. Will the cost change for the new interface? No, you as desk customers receive one-to-one price swapping for Service Cloud licenses. So if you have any further follow-up questions on that, please reach out to us in support and we can give you the full rundown of what the offering is. But briefly, you will get your Service Cloud licenses your desk licenses will just be swapped for Service Cloud licenses and the price won't change. That is an offer that we're giving desk customers for this move.
I think we have time for one last question, Sarah.
Yeah, and it's a good one. So does Service Cloud have the same functionality where, say, service.ourcompany.com can be the go-to site for your Service Cloud communication? Yes, so you can use your own CNAME for your community, and you can also use your own email addresses. It's just like Desk, the same functionality exists.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sarah. And thank you, everyone, for posting these questions. These are really awesome questions. Sarah and I both hope that this has been an informative session to all of you. Again, you will receive an email with all the links, and you'll receive a link to the actual recording. We do need to wrap up as it is the top of the hour right now. So thank you all for joining so much. And we hope that you will sign up for upcoming webinar sessions. We have both office hours as well as some specific topics coming up. So stay tuned and keep an eye out for our calendars where we will post updates and new sessions will be added. Thank you all so much.